Welcome to the Thought Brothers. Today is October 15th, and this week on the Thought Brothers, we're talking about something that can literally change our future, and that's reading. We're joined by Theresa Merritt-Watson. She's been on our show before. She's a visionary behind Lead and Read, a program that's helping Black children discover the power of words, books, and culture. Theresa's teaming up with the African American Church and Blacks In, we'll talk about that, to create daily Black facts, book clubs, mentorship circles that are lighting up young minds. This is about raising leaders one reader at a time. Lord knows we need that. Theresa, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? And really, thank you for having me.
Oh no, this is great for us, and I'm about to turn it over to the fellas. You know, they do their research. All of them, I can say, Theresa, can read. All of them. So, I'm gonna throw the book over to Mr. Spivey. Take it away, Mr. Spivey.
Well, Theresa, I can read, but I have a hard time seeing. So you see, I got these glasses on. Theresa, I'm gonna kind of get off the beaten path. I have a question I'd like to get your opinion on. It appears that today and time and the current climate that we're living in, that there is a concerted effort to get rid of Black history. I mean, there has been a concerted effort over the period of time, over the years. I mean, you're well familiar with people like, Jesse Russell and Gladys West, who was part of Hidden Figures, who invented the GPS, and Jesse Russell, who invented components of the cell phone, two of the most important things that we use every day. But it appears as though now there's a concerted effort to basically stop what you're trying to do with, closing down Black museums, taking artifacts out of Black museums, and basically trying to take us back to, which I consider, with other things that's going on, back to the early 60s, back when we had to sit in at F.W. Woodworth's and places like that. So I just want to get your opinion on, do you think this is going to be successful? Because God knows that Black kids don't know enough about Black inventors now. And with what the current climate, the current political machine is trying to do, they're trying to erase it completely.
Well, I think that if we don't do anything, they can erase it. One of the things, and I will tell you, it goes back beyond the 60s. One of the things that I will say is that I think this is an opportunity for us. It's not just the children, it's the parents. I would say the parents don't know the history, so it's harder for them to convey it. And you can't, if someone has the information, you can't take it away from them. What is happening now, you can take it away because we don't have it. And so, and I'll give you an example. I did a history lesson just in a group, and I think I told you this, 55 to 85 were the members. Not one person knew any of the 14 people that are in my book, not one. There was 100 people in the room. So, and I'm talking about adults. So this is a thing that we have allowed. And so if someone's not teaching our kids, I went to an all-Black school, and I will tell you that I learned more about Africa and Blackness at Frank Porter Graham than I did the whole rest of my time. I felt like we were fighting equality once I left that environment. So I'm not opposed to Black schools when they're structured Black school, not really run by the system. But I think that it's highly possible. We have to unite, and I feel like that we are uniting in a different way right now. We see different groups uniting, and then once we unite, we come together as a community. I was looking, as I told you, I was doing my dissertation, and I was in Philadelphia, and so as you ride around Philadelphia, there's a lot of places that you could just pick a street and say, let's unite this street. And let's unite the street behind it. And we just keep going. We can unite as people, because when we didn't have anything and our neighbor needed food, we provided them with food. So I believe that it can happen. I believe that people, I've had people tell me, don't use the Black church. They're just not doing anything. I think the Black church is just as viable now as it was back in the 60s. And so I think when Lead and Read, if you want to start our kids on a trajectory that's not controlled by another environment, this is the perfect way to do it. So yes, the answer to your question, I do think that we can do it. In fact, I'm pretty certain we can do it. But we got to understand, we got to make our kids understand uniting for a purpose and our culture and understanding our history has a lot of value. People don't see the value sometimes until you sit down and talk to them. So I see more about Black history now than I've ever seen people being more aware of. I'm talking about little kids that I speak with. And if I go do a classroom, I tell them, don't just let me read you a story about, don't read my book to you. I'll tell you some Black facts or things. Start taking those things and calling it Alexandra Miles when you push the elevator door and it opens. So the kids can start being familiar with it. When you use your cell phone, yeah, this proper name is cell phone, but how many things we have that we don't call it the proper name? You can call it Jesse Russell, just reinforcers, all these reinforcers that we can do for our kids and ourselves. But we do need the parents to really buckle down. So the answer to your question is yes, I do think we can make a tremendous difference.
The thing that troubles me is the thing that you said, that a lot of the parents today do not know Black history themselves.
That is true.
So if they don't know it, they can't teach it to the kids. But the thing that really troubles me is a lot of these kids, they can learn certain things if they go to the Smithsonian museums and a lot of these other Black museums that are in like Philadelphia and Chicago and places like that. But if you're able, or if the political machine is able to close these things down, it's going to make it even worse for them learning. Because a lot of times, as you said, you had a book and you had 100 parents and they didn't know anybody in your book. And I have a saying that I've said here before, and I guess a lot of it has to do with me being a former history teacher years ago. But if you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat it. And that's what's happening now. Someone is trying to force us to repeat our history from 50 years ago.
But you can only do that. See, that was like a pre-plan. As you saw all the growth and movement in the 60s, so you had to settle it down and rewrite, redirect how Black people were growing and developing and inventing things and doing all these wonderful things. And so now we are in a school system that says, okay, this is my idea of social promotion. We allowed, I'm talking about Black parents, we allowed them to say social promotion is good for kids because it helps their emotional, it helps them emotionally. However, you as a parent have spent so many years telling your kids, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't manipulate, and all these things. And when you do social promotion, what you're saying, it's a lie. You did not master the skills to go to the next grade. So now that system has negated everything that you have been teaching your kids about lying. And so what should have happened, in my opinion, and of course, it's just my opinion, is that any child that's failing and have deficiency, you see it between the first six or 9 weeks of school. Don't try to push on all that curriculum stuff that they need to be learning science and they need to be learning Spanish or French or whatever they learn in the first grade. Just take it and say, I'm pulling them out and they're going to master the reading skill in this 9-week period. And you just keep working with them and on their weaknesses, opposed to just having them follow a full pattern. Because of that pattern of mathematics, of science, will come a lot easier to them when they have mastered reading. But if you can't read, that science, and you looking at the word biology, you have no way of knowing how to break it down because you haven't mastered those skills. So my thing is just do all that in the first grade and let them master reading. And when they pass to the second grade, chances are that's where they're supposed to belong. But we have had, I talked to a teacher last night And she says she had a student in the 6th grade, and he could not even write his name. And the system had just passed him on from one grade to the next grade to the next grade. He couldn't write his name. He didn't know his alphabet in 6th grade. And she said she was determined if she has to spend the night at this kid's house, that this kid would not go into 7th grade with these kind of deficiencies. And this is what our kids are facing. So it's what we do. We sometimes, as parents, we give all the power to the school. I think parents need to know that they have power too. It's how you approach it, how you deal with it, and the approach that you take. So you too, you put your time in. And people say that the parents don't have, they're not putting their time in. Well, I say that parents are putting a lot of time in, but a lot of parents don't know what to do and how to do it. And that's where we come in other areas. That's our team, that's our community building. I remember doing tutoring math to many people in our neighborhood. Not that my math skill was super good, but that's the way our neighborhood was designed. If you hear somebody help you over there.
Thanks.
I just, before somebody else jumps in, this is so what you're saying. I went to the all-black school also. And
I did too.
I was talking to a celebrity a couple weeks ago about Lift Every Voice and Sing. And they didn't know about it. And see, I took for granted that we had to know that song in DC public schools. We had to know it by heart in elementary school. That wasn't the case as I grew older, The other thing that struck me, you said so many things that struck me, but I was at a parent-teacher meeting last week, and there was a grandparent who was they were talking about, because all the kids have iPads now, even in elementary school, or at least in this county, up to the 3rd and 4th grade and on up. And this elderly Black man, he said he was 82 years old. He said, what if you don't own an iPad? What if you don't own this? Because they were talking about all the systems in place, and with the assumption that everybody had a computer or a tablet in the house. He didn't have it. And not only that, he was 82, said he's raising his 5-year-old great-granddaughter. Now this dude something broke down if he is raising his 5-year-old granddaughter. That seems like a lose-lose situation, where back when I grew up, that community, people on my block, man, they'd be stepping up, doing whatever they could to make sure that he had all the support he needed.
Exactly. So, but I will say that most districts that where the kids that young have iPads, the district that I'm in now, every child has an iPad. If you don't have the internet, let's say Spectrum or Time Warner, whatever, they pay for it for you. If you meet each economic, if they will pay for it for you. So I was wondering, but I personally don't think that a kid should be wrapped in a blanket in an iPad. I think that it bothers their critical thinking skills. And not to say that you can't do critical thinking with an iPad, but some of that stuff does not necessarily come that way. I still think there's value in learning how to do math longhand. And sometimes I will actually do that just to keep my brain active. So, but I do think that that we are codependent on electronics right now.
All right, no, that's good. I'm sorry, fellas. Who's next?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. Hey, Miss Merritt-Watson, thank you for joining the show. Let me ask you.
Having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Really want to find out, when I look at today's youth, especially the junior high and the high school age kids, they generally only read if they are required to read to pass a course, or if it's something of interest on TikTok or social media. That's when they read. Not too many are running to the library. Not too many are grabbing a good book. I don't know when you're ever going to see a teenager who's 16 years old with a good book sitting on a park bench on a nice day reading it, but they all have their phone out. What do you think we can do to help motivate this next generation to actually pick up a book and take and get some additional value out of holding something, looking at the pages physically, as opposed to being, as you said, dependent on electronics? What can we do?
Well, there are two things that I've thought about this, by the way, a lot. Um, and you're right, you don't often see our kids picking up a book. Well, it is a love for reading that starts very young. And so we have a reading club called Blacks In. Blacks In actually gives you a black, if you go to Blacks In underscore TikTok or Instagram, you get a black fact every day. I wanted to make sure that I reach people to make sure that they know that we get a black fact every single day. Now, with that said, Lead and Read, we got a lot of our kids between the ages of 4 and 19 that's in school. They can't read. They don't know what to do to improve their reading. Now it becomes embarrassing to know that you're in 10th grade and you're reading at second grade level. Now, big burly football players not likely to come to you and say anything to you. So this program, Lead and Read, says to the church, we know that you are strong in our civil rights. You know that we know that our church, our Black church, got our back. You can't look at what you see on YouTube and think it's the massive. In general, our church do have our back. So we wanted to use that entity where the Black church joined my nonprofit, Synergy Training Solution, and the members of that church will get an African-American student in the community. The community can be anywhere in the United States. Like I have a kid that's in North Carolina, I have a kid that's in California, but you have these kids and they call you once a week, they read to you 10 minutes, only 10 minutes. So, and you give them a black fact later, like you said, Gladys West created the GPS. There's food for thought so they can know that we're still, Black people doing great things. But it's designed to improve their reading skill, their critical thinking skills, and it's also designed for them to help them develop a love for reading. We don't want our kids to only pick up things when they say read, because most of the time you reading stuff in school has nothing to do with your growth and development. It's, can you retain this? Can you tell me what this is about? Can you comprehend? That's what it's asking you. And so with that, we said, what is going to happen to our kids if they're not reading about themselves? So we decided not just to read Black books, because we got reading a book called, I think it's called Heather, but it's about a cat. But you got to be a Black author to participate in our 4 to 7 and 8 to 10 program. You got to be a Black author. It doesn't necessarily. So the goal is to help our kids develop a love for reading. And in the meantime, I've been told that some parents say, well, I read that, and I'm telling you, I picked up another book and I went and got another book. And so it's impacting the parents as well. So, and you have to take a look at our incarceration rate and the growth rate of women and girls that are going to juvenile delinquent centers, and the number of schools that now have juvenile delinquent environment. I think they call them alternative schools, and the number of girls that are in it, and the number of our boys, and their track to the next position that they hold, which is normally prison. They stay on that track. And so what we want to do is defer that type of behavior in some way, somehow. And so, there's a lot of things that we did this summer. We created I didn't create, this was another organization in Delaware called Passion, Pursuit, and Purpose, because our kids, particularly our boys, get out of high school, they can't read, they don't have the skills for a job, and they have no idea, no one had ever told them about a passion. But each one of us, I believe in God, and I know God has given each one of us a passion, given each one of us a purpose. And so our kids now don't even know that you keep playing with things and dabbing into stuff, you can see what your passion is and end up with your purpose. But our kids are graduating not even with neither one of those words as part of their vocabulary. We as people, Black people, we can unite and make a powerhouse. We are doing great things without the support of the United States in general.
Thank you.
CJ.
All right. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right, sorry, I got my headphones on. It's like a different audio dynamic. Okay, so I can always come in last after so many great points were made. So thank you for coming on and blessing us with all this information. My question, I guess, is how do we, I guess, preserve that culture of our educational system during this fascist regime that basically is using anti-intellectualism as a weapon and as a way to speed up the fascist takeover because people are hopelessly stupid. I hate to say it, but one of the reasons we are where we are today with the people we have elected and, the people that have lots of money and power is there's the rise of anti-intellectualism. As you said, there's been talk about mentioned already of mass censorship from this regime. Donald Trump himself is very much proud of the anti-intellectual. He says smart people don't like him type, and that type of energy. How do we preserve our culture when the government and the people in charge are the ones who are now the gatekeepers and now there's a concerted effort to destroy, like I said, any efforts of people, like I said, defunding and destroying the Department of Education is a great example of some things. I know you mentioned banding together earlier, but is there any more specifics you could give or maybe, a little bit more information on that end?
CJ, it's nice to see you again. And thank you for that question. Well, I don't have a definitive answer, but I've been trying some things and seeing what worked. I know a lot of kids. I know that sometimes we have to intervene and help each other. I don't really have to add another child to my plate, but I'm in my car a lot. And one of the things, I know a child goes to guitar lessons once a week, and his parents are having a hard time of him practicing. I called him at 3 o'clock to 3:30. He practiced for a half an hour every day. That's my timer goes off to call him. He's already set up. Now he's playing on his own. Been doing it for a year. So the other one is I send math problems to a little girl, 6th grade, and she's struggling in math. So I just send her like 2 or 3 problems, things that can activate your mind, just things that we can do when we see our child, our family in need. So we've gotten away from the community type environment that we're accustomed to as Black people. And some of us have become individualistic. That is not a natural form for us, but we have embraced that type of behavior. So it keeps us away from the natural Black unity that we have. So I say to any church, any entity, the Black entity, that we're going to have to start making sure we contribute what we need. We can't just go and work, the Deltas get their group once a month and call it the day. Well, I'm not a Delta, by the way. I just have, I used to work a lot with them, but, my girlfriend was in, but nonetheless, they have the reading group. You got to do more than that. And once that child leaves you, what have you done for the next 30 days? Why can't you just pick up the phone and say, what's your subject, what's your strength, what's your weakness, enhance whatever they have, and help them bring up whatever their weaknesses are and enhance what they have. And so we're not doing that. We'll see a kid that's suffering, we'll see a kid on the street, and we'll just let it go. Or we'll be at our friend's house, knowing that the kid is failing math and English. And, as they say, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and we just let it go. And so I think that once we get back and we start embracing who we are as people, in our natural environment. Our natural culture is more of a community type, not an individual type. So I think that'll be a major contributing factor. And when I look at Blacks In, we've done as much as we can, making sure that people learn the history. Blacks In, actually, anybody can join in that age bracket. You know, sometimes the parents are sitting on it as we were testing it and things like that. But they can join and sit in and listen because we talk about whatever we're going to read. And Martin Luther King says that if we ever lose critical thinking, we're going to be in trouble. We're in trouble right now because we have allowed the system. School is not just, we have allowed the system to just embrace any curriculum without even including us in the curriculum. And so now we got a big problem because our kids will go to first or third grade and they'll learn that Martin Luther King was a civil rights leader, and that's all they know about him. There's more substance to Martin Luther King than just being a civil rights leader. You know, there's more to Rosa Parks sitting on the bus, not getting out of her seat, than just not getting out of her seat. But that's all we know. And that's what our kids are taught. But we as parents, we, you know, I don't advocate. I think that we really should fight for what is right. Don't let a curriculum just come through the school because the school board approved it. Have something to say about it. You know, you don't see yourself in it. Why is that? And so the people that's writing the curriculum, they don't feel compelled to do it. Why? Because we haven't said a word. You know, our kids by the third grade, I'm telling you, we're losing our kids. And why do you think by fourth grade, there are people sitting there trying to determine how many prisons they're going to build because we didn't make them do the curriculum? You know, we pay taxes just like everybody else do. We have a say. We do have a say. And I think it's time for us to really, really start making a difference in what's introduced to our children.
Thank you for that. Yeah, like I said, the focus of community is going to be essential going forward in terms of resisting what goes forward. On top of my question, I did have a comment slash suggestion that I have kind of learned over the years. I've done some teaching over the years. I love reading personally, but I did not like school. And I feel like I've solved the puzzle of trying to get people interested in reading. And I think a lot of educators in schools go about it in the wrong way. They use reading, and you kind of alluded to it earlier. They kind of use reading as a punishment at times, and you're reading a lot of material that you're not interested in and that you're forced to read. And when you're forced to read things and that you're not interested in, you associate that negativity with reading in itself. So I remember back when I was in middle school, going to private school, they would punish you by reading and writing the Bible. And that's not going to make you a fan of reading and writing the Bible when every time you get in trouble in detention, that is used as a punishment for you, yeah, as an example. But what I found to get a lot of kids interested into reading is a great form for me personally was comic books. Comic books are an excellent way, or like an opening a door, especially for somebody who's young, especially right now with the popularity of those movies, the Marvel movies, the DC movies. They're very popular. They're based in comic books. And I remember growing up, that really helped me get excited about reading material. They're only books I was excited to grab. They're actually surprisingly advanced for the age groups that they are targeted for. So most people associate comic books with being for kids specifically, but they're not really. Most of them are written by adults for adults and have extensive storylines and vocabulary. So as they're associated with being very simple picture books, a lot of time comic books have a lot of intricacies that are a great gateway to getting someone excited to reading and picking up a book every week and getting excited about following a storyline and, just stimulating that part of your brain rather than just, the mindless kind of TikTok, YouTube entertainment that we have now.
I agree with you. I certainly hope to see where Black people take on ownership of writing something like the Marvel series. I like those kind of movies, actually. I like the Thor, and it has a black background if you start researching these different Marvel people. And so I'm looking forward to seeing maybe you, CJ, bring out, we don't have to keep going to Disney for this, So, we need some we need people, more manufacturers or designers and business owners in that space. And I will be your first customer. I will be sitting right there in the theater
I
watching that
appreciate
movie.
I appreciate that. I do have some ideas, but I would like to support. There are some great black creators now. Back in the 90s, DC Comics specifically had a imprint called Milestone Comics, which was all black creators making black comics. Like there was like a black version of Superman called Icon. There's a black version of kind of Spider-Man called Static Shock, who became very popular. He had a cartoon in the 2000s back when I was a kid, and it was very, very popular. So if we can bring more things like that, they've been talked about bringing back the Milestone line for years, but there's been like legal disputes with the rights of the characters, so it's kind of been a mess. But if we can get more things like that, Milestone was a great initiative. Again, it was all black creators, black artists, editors, making creations for black people specifically that spoke, to us and our culture. And if we can get more things like that funded, as you said, not just the big budget Marvel Disney stuff, but there are a lot of great creators working on some great comics that need support. And in this capitalist society, the only way those things continue and can, grow is that you support it with your money. Because if they don't see the monetary support, those big companies won't allow those things to continue and they won't fund those creators. So I think it is important that we look back and support those black creators and people telling our stories.
CJ, before we go on, one of the things I do want to say is that we spend our money with Disney. And so, and I'm not saying that it's not right, but one of the things I want to address is that right now Black people spend a lot of money. We have the ability to impact, and we worry a lot and concern ourselves with these very, very powerful people, as a lot of people say. So when we stop spending money at Target, if we stop spending money at Clorox, if we stop spending money, and literally, I'm gonna tell you, Theresa loves a good boycott. No, I do. I will go, I really do. And so if they tell me something that's going on impacting Black people, I got an alternative. So I think that sometimes when we, like, I think it's a Koch brother that does the Sherman toilet paper. If all of us got together and just said, we're not buying that stuff anymore. And I'm not certain about that, so let me take that off. But I think that whatever the paper products or the products that they have, if we decide as Black people we're not purchasing that anymore, they can't go to the theater and say, we're going to defund this. Because most of us are in the position of wanting the money and needing the money as appealing $1 million, $2 million that appeal to us. We say, okay, forget that. We're going to sign for this. But it's not always in our best interest long time. Just like the music industry, the people that's making the money it's not the musicians. A lot of our musicians end up broken poor because of that. So I'm just, if we want to do it, we have to push through it. As it's easier said than done, but sometimes just we have to unite and just
make the sacrifice for the greater good. We got to make the sacrifice for the greater good, and just be strategic.
Having people control us
that.
Control us with the dollar.
What you're saying is very true. They had me pegged on here as a researcher, and I came across some research. It was probably it was one of the shows we were preparing for, and it was very interesting what I came across, and it was talking about the black dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And it talked about the black dollar is being spent with white landlords. It's being spent in white utility companies. It's being spent in white car companies, Ford, Tesla, and those places. It's being spent in white banks where we pay the interest. And then you go from there, it's being spent in the Asian community. They own all of the beauty products. And the service stations, the gas stations, is owned by the Indians and the Arabs. And then it went on to further say that the black dollar stays in the Black community for 6 hours.
Yep.
And it stays in the Asian community for 17 days. And in the Arab and Indian community, their dollar stays for 28 days. So what you're saying is absolutely true.
Mhm.
No,
I just
this
think
has
we
been so good. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
we just need to, you know, need to stop being threatened and let it activate you, and you're saying, okay, I can't do this,
Yeah.
because you don't win when you sell yourself in the end. You just don't win.
And
You
the
know,
last thing I came across that talked about that, talked about our dollars and where it was being spent. But then it went on further to say that we spent our money in white-owned stores
Hmm.
and that our platforms that we use every day is owned by whites. So it's basically talking about the black dollar is being spent everywhere except in the black community.
But we do, Dr. Spivey, I do think that we really do need to start owning some things.
Yeah.
And so when we spend it, it used to be our dress shop and our laundromat and where I take the dry cleaners and things like that. Though they were owned by black people, but it's where are black stores now? Where are grocery stores? And so that's something we ourselves need to look at. And sometimes we open them and we'll run out of them. Or we'll open them and then the biggest and greatest come and put it next door to us. We know these things happen. And so we got to be willing to, support our people.
What you're saying is very true. I can remember growing up as a kid before we had the sit-ins at the F.W. Woodworth's and those places. You had black restaurants, you
Hmm.
had black theaters, you had all kinds of black businesses. But once integration came about and we were successful in those sit-ins, all of a sudden people were able to now go to the Pizza Hut, to the SW cafeteria, and they left those black businesses. And a lot of them went out of business and were never able to return.
And that's going on to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Theresa, we're coming off the heels of some wildly successful podcasts with health and
Hmm.
wellness. I'm trying to put together, I was like, okay, I'm a step away from health and wellness. We're coming back to those shows, but I'm trying to make sure that the content is relevant. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, the next show after menopause 2 and prostate cancer, I don't want a drop or anything. The information that been talked about in this show, oh, I'm not worried anymore. I'm not worried. We got some bombs that were dropped here. And so I want to close out the show by asking our co-hosts, what's the one takeaway that you got out of today's show as we wind it down? Mr. Spivey, what's your takeaway?
Well, the takeaway that I have is that what Ms. Watson said, we have to start trying to come back together, support our own, which is something that we do not do, and to try to get back to the way things were. You know, I'm very torn because I know that the community-based things that were 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago are no longer. I mean, if you think about it, back in the 50s and the 40s and the 60s, your black doctor lived in your neighborhood.
That's true.
Yep.
Today, your black doctor does not want to live in your neighborhood. He wants to live uptown. And so this is when the communities became fractured, and and myself, I'm kind of guilty of it. I mean, I live in a neighborhood now, and I probably know two of my neighbors, and I don't know the person that lives 2 doors to the left of me or the person that lives 3 doors to the right. So the thing of it is we have to get back to community, and we really have. My takeaway is we need to really pay more attention to our kids because, I mean, I went to a school. Ms. Watson went to a school. You went to a school when people were concerned about you. Today, if you don't learn, a lot of these people are not concerned about you, and what they say is your kid is a problem, and they put them on Ritalin or whatever, and that's it.
Okay.
True that.
Carlos.
Yes, my takeaway is encourage young people to read. And the young people aren't just the 15-year-olds. The young people can also be the parents. Think about it. A 15-year-old kid who has a parent who became a parent at the age of 20 is 35 years old. 1990 doesn't seem like it was that long ago. So we need to encourage all the young people and anyone who hasn't had a great deal of experience reading and holding a book to pick one up and educate themselves and help develop their knowledge and their communication skills and their understanding of what's happening, and not just relying on TikTok and social media. So that's my takeaway. Hold the book and not necessarily the phone. You got to balance it, but hold the book.
Okay. CJ.
I think one of the reasons people are so more individualistic is one of the reasons is they're being crushed by capitalism like everyone else in this economy and things like that. And that's by design. I think that's one of the reasons they're making economic conditions worse. They're about to triple people's healthcare premiums and cause more economic harm because more you're struggling to make it from paycheck to paycheck, the less you can worry about the village or your neighbor. And that's what they're counting on. So we really have to do our best to band together as a community and to fight back against the forces that are going to be making things a lot tougher going forward.
Wow. Theresa, there's so many messages. When we go back and look at this show, there could be so many pearls of wisdom and just messages and common sense. The thing that I'm taking away is that most of the things that you talked about are practical things that we can do if we're willing to do the work. When was the last time you read to a child? We can
Yesterday.
do that. We can do that. You know,
Yeah.
we can do that. We can put a book in their hand. I'm with Carlos and with you and everyone else, but I think it starts with putting a book in their hand, reading. I love the scenario that you used and shared about, you know, the timer on your phone at this time. I'm going to connect with this kid, you know, and just the cumulative effect that it can have in restoring someone's confidence in their ability. It just blows me away. Tell us again where people can find your books, where they can find, I mean, you know, just be shameless plugs, you know, where can they get your stuff?
Well, for Lead and Read, you go to synergytrainingsolutions.org and you click on the tab that says Lead and Read and just register, sign up for it. It is $85 a year for the church, and for that they get a quarterly report. It has the school, the student, not the student name, but the student ID. Only the church leader, one church leader can see the student name. It tells the school, the book, the number of pages, a lot of things that comes in that report. And then we have on the Synergy Network, well, actually on the Blacks In, we have the book club. If you 47, and that's at 11 o'clock, 11:30. And these discussions are going to be fun because I've had these discussions with kids before, and I'm always surprised where they go because their imagination is just out there. And then from 12 to 12:30, we have the 8 to 10-year-old. And this is designed, we want our kids to really develop a love for reading. And if we start early enough, we can gather that. And they're not just reading about our inventors and the great things that we've done. They're also just reading things about Black authors, that's written by Black authors like Hillary the Kitten. And so that's our next book. So you can go to Blacks In, is blacks-in.com, and you can register there. And every single day you get a Black fact if you go into Blacks In _ Instagram and YouTube. It is very important that we learn our history. It is and I'm still learning stuff, by the way, Dr. Spivey. I am still learning things about our history. But it's so important and just gives me a sense of pride. And when a kid is able to go to school and they know who they are, you know, you can't you can't belittle them. You can't tell them they got it. It's stored in them already. And that's what we want our kids to be. They know who they are. They know where they came from. And we just have not instilled that kind of behavior in our kids just yet. So I'm looking forward to people signing up. I'm looking forward to getting in contact with people. And it does work. We have a 10th grader that was reading in 2nd grade. And now all this communication is done over the phone, except for the book club. But leading readers over the phone, so you don't have to leave your house. This is why all the members in the church can participate, because you don't have to leave your house. We don't want you to leave your house, because if a kid is in 10th grade, can't read at 2nd grade, they don't want to be looking at you. But as they progress and they get reading at the 8th grade level, they might decide that, oh, I don't mind looking at them. Of course, they got to ask their parents but they might do something together, but they don't have that sense of shame. And that's what we got to get rid of in our community. We got to get back that pride. And I think that if we would tackle this head on, it would impact the crime that we have, because people are not just arbitrarily doing crime. I believe that they feel like they don't have an alternative. Education is not their forefront. They're not going to get a job. These other things that impact them. But I do believe reading will impact our community in so many ways.
Wow. Folks, there you have it. Theresa Merritt-Watson. She's given us at least 1 or 2 blueprints to building a stronger community, one reader at a time. It's just that simple in terms of the platform. It's doable, it's practical. We just have to be willing to do it and start incrementally. Thank you, Theresa. Thank you for being on the show. You certainly took a load off my mind about how we're going to follow up. Boy, that's, whew. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Gary Johnson for the Thought Brothers, and until next week, we are out of here. Hang on for a minute. Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks to you, I'm not the broken hearted. Thanks to you, I'm finally thinking about me. In the end, the day you left was just my beginning. In the end, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.